Welcome to the CRAZYDRE Podcast Show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's your main man, aka Crazy Crockett, aka Andres Podcast. Brought to you by RSS.com, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'd like to thank everyone around the world who's listening to my podcast or watching. I'd like to apologize to all my fan favorites out there that were supposed to watch my newest episode about Juan Soto going to the Mets. However, I accidentally erased the whole damn film, or the whole darn video. Yes, I did that. I don't know why I did that. I downloaded it. I was going to transfer it, and I just didn't do it correctly. Supposedly, that's kind of what happened. All right, folks, here we go. This is going to be a podcast about sports again. I'm going to talk about a little bit of everything. I may not really talk much about the Detroit Lions, as the YouTubers out there will actually see me wearing a Philadelphia hat and, a burgundy shirt, sweater, kind of like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood going on around here. But, I felt kind of like, this is part of the year that I can wear all kinds of baseball hats that I enjoy wearing. I love baseball. I love, the only thing I really do is collect baseball hats. I don't collect video games or PlayStations. I don't collect cards no more. But I usually, at this point, I'm going to just collect hats. And I'm down to 6 more hats to get to. Cleveland Guardians, sorry. Made a mistake. It should be the Indians. I'm also going to get Toronto Blue Jays. Not a great fan of theirs, but it's 25 minutes away from Detroit. Less than that probably. But here we go. So we got to talk about, I got these 2 other hats here with me. I got a New York hat, New York Mets, and New York Yankees. Now, why do I have both these hats out there? And I think you know why. Because I've got to start out with talking about Juan Soto, because it's a big deal. And let me tell you why it's a big deal as I grab my notes. So, obviously, Juan Soto signed for $765 million for 15 years. Here's a fun fact. He had an opportunity to sign with the Washington Nationals for 15 years for only $440 million. Clarified, only $440. I mean, I don't even know what I would do with $100 million or $10 million or $1 million into my bank account tomorrow morning. But Juan Soto goes to the Mets from the Yankees in the offseason. Now, I think this is a bigger deal for the New York Yankees. I've seen so many people on TikTok, New York Yankee fans, are cussing him out and say, F you, we don't need you, we hope that you pass away, we don't care, whatever. And I tell you what, those Yankee fans have every right to feel the same way. Because you know why? Because you figure that going to the postseason, playing with Aaron Judge, and almost making it to fill out the whole World Series. And you know what? I don't know what got you into the idea that, or the Yankees fan don't understand how you can't connect with New York and New York Yankee fans. The greatest fans in the world, right? They're there for you, they'll cuss you out, they'll love you, they'll do anything for you. As long as you win, as long as you try, everything possible. And in some way, some form, Juan Soto does not feel a connection with Aaron Judge or Aaron Boone, the manager of the Yankees, or the Yankee fans themselves. However, he feels like he's going to get a connection with New York Mets fans. which I would say probably as faithful as Detroit Tigers fans, okay? What I mean by that is that I feel like the Mets fans care about their team, but if they're losing, they don't care as much vocally. Saying that $765 million is ridiculous. For example, 15 years. Why would you need to sign a player for 15 years? And I know Juan Soto is a smart guy and he has the possibility to opt out after 5 years. What does that mean? That means that if the team is going downhill, or let's say they make the playoffs and they're doing real well and he doesn't like the players, he can leave. He can leave after 5 years. And I think this is just kind of weird to see baseball teams willing to compromise with players who are going to be in their late 30s into their 40s, and knowing that their career is going to probably decline. Probably by the time they hit like 33 to 35 years old, their career will be just going downhill. And it's not because they're not good no more and all that. It is going to be because of that. It's because they're old. Why would you need an old baseball player on the baseball team to play on your roster or be on your roster? And I get it. Juan Soto, I feel like Juan Soto, after 5 years, he'll just leave. He'll get his money's worth. He'll probably end up somewhere on a team that's about to make the playoffs or make the World Series or anything in that scenario. And to tell you the truth, if you're a Yankee fan and you heard that they had a possibility of signing him for like $700 million and maybe around 12 to 15 years, I think you got the better bargain, because now you can put your assets on someone else, like Max Fried. And I'll get to Max Fried in a second. But in reality, the Yankees have a hidden problem. With Aaron Judge in the playoffs was nowhere to be found. He couldn't hit a home run if the ball was hit like a softball or pitched to him like a softball. I feel like when I saw Aaron Judge swing and miss, it reminded me of Spencer Torkelson for Detroit Tigers. They had their heads down, but their eyes were like not focusing on the baseball, or their eyes were seeing through the baseball. And that's kind of what happened to Aaron Judge. I think that I think the perception is that he's such a big guy and he's supposed to be so strong and he's supposed to hit so many home runs. In reality, he's probably better off just hitting the ball and making it into the outfield and hitting a single or a double. But the Yankee Stadium is a false reality. It's not. It's supposed to be a home run hitter baseball field, but I feel like the players that go there or who are drafted there, their job is to hit home runs first and not get on base. And I think with baseball, if you're an old baseball fan that I am, you need to create rallies. And rallies start in the 3rd inning or the 6th inning, or recently they're in the 8th and 9th inning. But that's what baseball is really about. It's not always about hitting home runs. It's about putting yourself where you have 2 guys on base with 1 out in the top of the 7th or the bottom of the 7th, and then you hit a double and you run in, 2 guys come in, or a guy comes in and there's a man on 3rd and a guy in 2nd. And then the next guy will hit or sacrifice fly, scores another run. But I think that, with Anthony Rizzo not hitting the ball that well. JJ Lemieux, he doesn't really hit that ball that well. Aaron Judge, during the regular season is great, but I'm not really impressed by him. If that was a Detroit Tigers stadium or New York Mets stadium, he probably would have only hit about 44 home runs, maybe 40, especially if he's playing in Detroit or New York or the Mets, Citibank Field. But saying that, the Yankees recovered. I think they recovered very well with Max Fried. I do question that 8-year, $214 million contract. Again, I don't understand why you have these guys play on your team for 8-9 years and they're already in their 7th year or 8th year in their baseball career. So if you by signing him for 7-8 years, he'd be on his 15th year. But I think it's more about the guaranteed money that they'll get paid than actually playing for 7-8 years, or 15 in Soto's case. But I really do think that the Yankees do have a pitching problem, especially starting pitching. I think that they're just missing something. And I think one of the biggest issues about the Yankees is that their farm system isn't what it was used to be back in the glory years of the Yankees, where they had a great farm system and the guys came up and played and they won World Series. Today, the Yankees and the Dodgers are really all about free agency and signing players for so many years. I mean, you got Ohtani that obviously was with the Dodgers this year, and instead of developing on players, they rely on foreign players and players that are actually have proven to themselves instead of grinding the system. Where the Tigers, obviously, as you can tell, they work the system pretty well. They got Kerry Carpenter. They got, unfortunately, Spencer Torkelson isn't really working out as well, but Riley Green is there. Other players, other pitchers like Tarek Skubal. We also have, I'm going blanks here, but the Tigers, they got their farm system. They made a lot of good trades, and their farm system is a lot stronger than I think that the Yankees are, or even the Dodgers. Maybe I'm just talking on my rear end. Just saying. But Tigers got Alex Cobb out of free agency, a 12th-year veteran, once played for Baltimore, and let me see here. Baltimore and a couple other teams. I didn't write down his whole career, but the Tigers really need a better staff. Obviously, Reese Olson is probably your best young prospect other than Tarek Skubal. Obviously, Casey Mize is came off a Tommy John surgery 2 years ago. So this past year, he was starting as a pitcher. It's going to take a while for him, I guess. But Detroit hasn't really made a big change about grabbing a third baseman or another first baseman to come to Detroit. Does Detroit have the money to pay for Pete Alonso? Is struggling or a very strong home run hitter for the New York Mets? Who knows? I don't know. But I do know the Mets probably will sign Pete Alonso by the end of this coming year if the Mets make the playoffs. If the Mets do not make the playoffs this year with Juan Soto I don't know what you would do. I think you would just count your blessings. And if this is, and I really don't know what Met fans think. I think the Mets fan might think that this is the craziest thing in the world to get Juan Soto on your team. And I know I'm going back and forth. So on a final note, we got to talk about two things. Michigan football, which we're really not going to talk about Michigan football. We're really talking about Ohio State. Their representative, John Williams, has written a bill that you cannot plant your flag at Ohio State Stadium. Now, why do I think this is kind of stupid, but it has to be talked about? It's because Ohio State lost to Michigan. And we were going to plant our flag in the middle of the field. And why would any taxpayer in Ohio give 2 cents about what we did on the football field after the game? What the Ohio State fans should care about is what they did during the game. What they didn't do, Ohio State didn't do during the game. They didn't beat Michigan. We beat them. They didn't beat us. Ryan Day looked so dazed and confused. He watched the riot. I just couldn't understand why Ryan Day was just standing there and not throwing his players off the field or telling them to go or defending them. I feel Ryan Day was just trying to save his job. And do I really think that they should save his job? I don't know. But you know what I do know? If you're in a state of Ohio, if someone's passing a bill that you cannot plant your flag in Ohio State, that also means that Ohio State flag cannot be planted in the middle of Ohio State Stadium, the horseshoe. That's just outright ridiculous. And why is this always Ohio State? Ohio State, you guys do know that you had 7 presidents coming out of that state. And how you try to pass a bill so that Michigan or Texas, for God's sake, Texas planted a flag right in our middle of our field. We didn't run out there and fuss about it. We just took it like a man should take it. Okay? You get punched in the face, stop crying. It didn't hurt so much. You lost the game. We lost to Texas. We lost to Oregon, for God's sake. I mean, I really think that, I'm really thinking that Ohio State might beat Tennessee just because they don't want to be embarrassed again at home. So that game in itself might be an upset game for Ohio State. Now, I know depending on what the seed is, if it's 8 and 9, I think Ohio State might be 9 and Tennessee might be 8. I don't know. But I do know that if Ohio State loses to Tennessee at the horseshoe, Ryan Day's job might be over. It might be gone. It might be done. And maybe that's why they brought Chip Kelly in there, but Chip Kelly did an awful job of playing call against Michigan. Horrible. Just completely horrible. On the final note, we got to talk about this guy who is a Sports Illustrated writer. His name is Robert Plant. Not the guy from Led Zeppelin, but a guy from Sports Illustrated saying that Dan Campbell is one of the worst coaches that he's ever seen. Now, there's a fine line in being a bad coach, and there's a fine line in being a great coach. And I'm going to say this to you as possible, is that Dan Campbell is a fine coach. And it's the reason why that is because we keep winning. If we kept losing, he would never have the job to this point. But we're winning. This is something that we don't do. This is something that Detroit Lions fans understand. We don't win. With Dan Campbell, we're winning. We're taking chances. Do we take too many chances? Maybe. But even I can tell you this. And I am probably a good critic of Dan Campbell. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it to you and say, "Oh, I love Dan Campbell," and then like 4 episodes down the road or 4 episodes earlier, you're going to say, "Well, you lied because you said you didn't like Dan Campbell's 4th down chances." No, I don't like them a lot. Sometimes, especially in the beginning of the 3rd quarter against Green Bay Packers, we were down by our 33-yard line, and we went for it for like 4th and 2, and we didn't come close to it. And the momentum was shifting towards Green Bay, because in that same time frame, Jared Goff, possession of one later or earlier, can't remember what came first, threw an interception to Green Bay. So that in that case, yes, Dan Campbell took his chances and failed. However, in the 4th quarter, to win the game, we went for it to get better field position, and we won the game. So if you're winning, it works. If you are losing, it doesn't work. And of course, we can always say stuff about the San Francisco game last year in the playoffs, where Dan Campbell could have gone for a field goal. And I think that's a different scenario that you're going to get. Different situation, different style of a different, not different style, but different situation. In the playoffs, you go for the points. During the season, you go for the win. Or you go for it. Or you keep your offense on the field. And you put the pressure on the defense. And you wear the defense out. That's how I think Dan Campbell is actually thinking. Dan Campbell is not actually thinking about winning the game at that point, or having the opportunity to win at the game at that point in the 3rd quarter, regardless if they make it or not. I think he's actually thinking about, how do I wear out the defense, and what's the best way of doing it? And the best way of doing it is to keep the offense out there on the field and going for it on 4th down. If you make it 4 out of 5 times, the defense is going to get worn out. That's the only way that I can think that's how he thinks. Now, it's a blessing to have a coach like Dan Campbell that has never been a coach before in high school or collegiate or another pros team, because he doesn't know what it feels like to lose. Now, he understands what it felt like losing 1-6 in his first year there, but overall, he doesn't have that Bill Belichick moment where he's overthinking, or he doesn't have that Bill Parcells or Bill Carr from the Pittsburgh Steelers back in the day. Doesn't have that. What he does have is he got grit and guts. So, there you go. That's why Dan Campbell keeps going for it. And I think that the only way that he'll stop doing that all the time is that if Detroit gets to playoffs 2 years more and he loses that fashion. If he loses a game because he went on the 4th down in the playoffs, he might reanalyze his judgment. But if he keeps winning, let's say if Detroit makes the playoffs again and they keep winning, and then they go to the Super Bowl, and they don't lose it because of a fourth down, but let's say they lose it because of a turnover, or they lose it because of the other team's just playing better in the fourth quarter, then I could see him changing, going too many times on fourth down. But if Detroit wins a Super Bowl, and he kept going for it in the fourth quarter in the Super Bowl, that could very much happen too. So if Detroit makes it to the Super Bowl and we win it on fourth downs, then Dan Campbell is not crazy or an idiot. He's a genius. He's basically Mike Ditka in today's version of coaching. He's tough. He doesn't care about your feelings. You have to live with your decisions. And that's one thing that Dan Campbell is really good at. Dan Campbell is really good at living with your decisions. Does he regret things in the past for losing? Yeah, he might, but he's not going to show it. Now, he'll probably end up crying if we win a Super Bowl, like the rest of every Michigander who loves the Detroit Lions will probably all cry too. I don't know any man that lives in the state of Michigan who's a Detroit Lion fan that won't cry. Besides some of you like guys and girls that are Green Bay Packer fans. But there you have it. I'm not going to talk about the Bills game against Detroit. And just because that could be a whole new episode too. But I may talk about in the future about that shooter who killed the health insurance CEO. Because I gotta talk about politics sometimes. But there you have it. It's gonna be Thursday morning. You listen to this. And I swear I'm gonna put this on YouTube so that you all listen to it. Don't freak out, all you Detroit Tiger fans out there. I do love my Detroit Tigers. I got a Detroit Tiger cup over here of water, not vodka. I'm not Russian. But peace, love, and yeah, find me on Spotify, on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Find me rss.com. Thank you. Those three groups of podcasting gibberish. Thank you to my foreign fans out there. Keep cheering me on, and I'll keep making out product or producing product or whatever. So peace, love. I'm out of here.